some additions to it at the committee stages. Thank you.
Call Jonathan Young.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to stand in support of this bill and note that parties on the other side of the House likewise are supporting it. I do want to say that we continually hear that the comment that none of this legislation will act as a deterrent to those activities. There are times, Mr. Speaker, when a judgment from a court is not actually just to serve as a deterrent but as a protection to society, particularly if somebody is prepared to assault a police officer or corrections officer. We need to question whether that person ought to be at liberty to continue or to assault members of the public. Because an assaulting a person in that level of authority shows that they have no regard at all to the rule of law. And let's not be mistaken that this bill is not about a soft counselling session to create a deterrence, but a protection. It's sending a signal. We are writing a line in the sand to say that the protection of our men and women in uniform, which represent the rule of law in our society, is something which we take of utmost seriousness. And to think that this legislation is unimportant, I believe, is a travesty of the purposes of this House, which is to protect our society. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that each of us here in this House know men and women in our communities who are police officers or corrections officers. Let's not forget that they are our friends. They are our neighbours. They are sportsmen and women. They are coaches. They are sons and daughters, mothers and fathers. They are family members, brothers and sisters. They are people like us who want to make a contribution not only in their vocation, but they are contributors to our society. But their job, unlike anyone else's in our community, pits them against the most violent in our communities, something which none other is required to do. I'd like to read out just what the Police Association have printed in their police news at the end of last year, because this tells the story of two of the officers who received bravery awards. And these are constables in Christchurch. Let me read. Constable Wardle was speaking after receiving a New Zealand Police Association Bravery Award along with his colleague, former Constable Marty Stiles. The two officers were involved in an incident in the Christchurch suburb of Phillipston in July last year, during which Senior Constable Bruce Lamb was shot in the face. His police dog Gage was killed and his colleague Constable Mitch Alatalo was shot in the leg. Constables Alatalo and Wardell were conducting a routine search under the Misuse of Drugs Act, during which the aggressive manner of one of the occupants led them to call for backup. Constable Stiles and dog handler Senior Constable Lamb and his dog Gage responded. The occupant refused to come out of his room. When Senior Constable Lamb opened the door, the man opened fire with a rifle, shooting him through the face. His next shot killed police dog Gage. The gunman then came to the doorway and opened fire again, this time hitting Constable Alatalo as the officer retreated, escaping from the house. While under fire, Constable Stiles grabbed his fallen colleague, Senior Constable Lamb, by the belt and dragged him back down the hallway towards safety. At the same time, Constable Wardle, then acting as sergeant, confronted the gunman with a taser. As he did so, the gunman aimed at Constable Wardle and pulled the trigger, but the firearm jammed. The officer fired the taser, but it failed to incapacitate the offender. To buy enough time for Constable Stiles to evacuate the wounded Bruce Lamb, Constable Wardle reloaded the taser and continued to challenge the offender, who briefly retreated before again following the officers out of the house and down the drive while pointing his rifle at them. Constable Wardle provided cover for his colleagues while they retreated. Following the officers' retreat, further armed police arrived. The offender rearmed himself with a higher-powered rifle and was ultimately arrested by the Armed Offenders Squad. This is the reason why this legislation is before the House, because these men and women are facing life-threatening situations that can happen any moment of any day. And as a government, we stand by our men and women in uniform who are there to protect the citizens of this nation. National is delivering on our promises to take action on violent crime. We have passed 18 new laws to make families safer in their homes and communities. We have made sentences tougher and strengthened bail law. We have boosted the number of police on the streets and given them new tools to tackle crime while improving services for victims. We are proud of the stance that we are taking. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Call Barbara Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of New Zealand First, I rise to support the Sentencing Aggravating Factors Amendment Bill. It is absolutely essential, Mr. Speaker, that our police officers and our prison officers and other staff who work in related roles to these areas are safe and as safe as possible in their workplace, and that any offence that is committed against them will be taken into account at sentencing. The government and the courts must take this seriously. Any workplace safety issue is viewed very, very seriously, and the same must apply here. We do not like to hear that the number of assaults on police officers and prison officers is increasing at the rate that it has done. Figures suggest 33% over the 2004 to 2009 period. But it does raise a number of questions, Mr.